G'day team, it's your old mate, the Kiwi Badger, coming at ya from Fielding. It's not a bad day, pretty warm. It was kind of chilly this morning. It's warmed up. Forecast is for a little bit of cloud, but other than that, she's going to be a perler. So where are we going? What are we doing? Well, we're going up to Taupo, or Taupo, if it's pronounced correctly in Te Reo Māori. I got a mate who's having a stag do, and that's tonight. So there's going to be a few beverages going to be consumed. I don't know what else we're doing, but yeah, stag do. But on the way, we're going to meet up with Double Shot Moto in Waiouru, which is just shy of Taupo. So we're going to be meeting him in Waiouru about midday. So the time now is 25 to 11, and we're just going to chill out, have a good ride. We're going to listen to a bit of music and enjoy the scenery. So come along for that. So while we're on our way to Waiouru, let's talk a little more about prisons, shall we? Many aspects of prison or corrections are interlacing, so you can kind of end up in a bit of a cyclic communication or conversation as to what's involved in a prison. But let's talk about staff training. So staff training here in New Zealand, you go to prison officer school for 4 months, where you learn how to be a prison officer, and then you leave and you do on-the-job training. Well, that's how it was done in my day anyway. It's changed a little now. You go and do two weeks or something at the training school, and then you go back to your home prison, so the prison that you'll end up working in. You do a couple of weeks putting into practice what you've just learnt, and then you go back down to prison officer school, ITC, initial training course. You go back to ITC, do another couple of 3 weeks, and yeah, so you do that until you've completed 4 months worth of training. Then you are given epaulets with 1 stripe, which denote that you are a corrections officer. After that, there's 2 stripes, which is an SCO, or Senior Corrections Officer, then a PCO, a Principal Corrections Officer, and then a UM, or a Unit Manager. And obviously they are managerial roles. You get trained in things like how to do a face to name muster, which is you walk around with a clipboard with a sheet full of pictures, and you have to be able to cite skin and breathing body, and you tick them off to make sure that you have put a face to a name and accounted for all of your prisoners. A face to name muster used to be done hourly when I started the job. Things have changed. They have things called random face to name musters, and 3 have to be completed within a 24-hour period, or if there's a code red situation. So nationally, the Department of Corrections is bound by several bits of legislation, policy and procedure, sort of guiding documents. One of which is the response policy, another one is the tactical options policy, and so those are nationwide policies, and they cover off things like code blue and code red situations. A code blue situation is a situation that can be handled at a unit level. Okay, so it's a lower end thing, like a slight disorder, a spontaneous use of force, a medical emergency, a fight in a yard, that kind of thing. And then you have code red situations, which are situations that affect, or that can do or will affect a whole site, a whole prison. So things like a bomb scare, a gas leak, an escape, a riot, a hostage-taking situation, so all that kind of thing. So if we have a code red situation, the standard operating procedure is that all prisoners are returned to their cells, they are locked down, a face-to-name muster is completed, and it's no one in or out, so a complete site lockdown. When I say no one in or out, that's generally speaking, but specifically, the only people who will be allowed in are emergency response services, and the only people who will be allowed out are those who are injured or given permission to leave. Other than that, no one in, no one out. Yeah, because we don't want people pretending to be staff trying to sneak out when in fact it's, yeah, we're missing a prisoner. Not cool. So I spoke in my first video about what prison officers have as far as tools are concerned. When I started in the job, we had keys and a radio, and that was it. Keys, radio, life experience, common sense, and ability to talk. That was kind of it. If the shit hit the fan, you were allowed to use reasonable and justifiable force to deal with the situation. And once there's 3 or more staff members or officers present, then you have to use government approved control and restraint techniques. You can't go punching, okay, unless of course you're outnumbered. So you might have 3 staff, 3 prisoners. So the approved control and restraint techniques are used when it's one to 3 staff on 1 prisoner, okay. Now, of course, we've got a change in uniform, so we've gone from brown and beige and green to blue, powder blue and dark blue. We look like police officers, like New Zealand police officers, essentially, to the untrained eye. And we carry on us keys, radio, stab-proof vest, which is high stab, low ballistic, bulletproof up to 9mm 357. Not that handgun crime is huge in New Zealand, but that's just the standard of the body armour we have. And we carry ICP, which is independent carry pepper spray, which measures in at around 2 million Scovilles. So to put that into perspective, there was a guy, I can't remember his name, jeepers. His name was Scoville, his last name was Scoville, he was a pharmacist, and he figured that capsicum family type vegetables burnt when you ate them. So for things that fall within that genus of vegetable, he came up with a scale that measures the chemical heat, and it's known as the Scoville heat unit scale. So a jalapeno would sit at around 8,000 Scovilles. What we in New Zealand call a capsicum, in America they called a bell pepper. That measures at 0 Scovilles because they have no capsaicin, which is the active ingredient in the pepper spray, is capsaicin. If you look at a habanero pepper sits at around, I believe it's 350,000 Scovilles, so we're getting hotter. A bujolka, so ghost pepper and or Carolina Reaper, which I believe is most recently the world's hottest edible pepper, that measures in at around 1 million Scovilles to 1.2 million Scovilles, and that's hot as shit. That's really, really hot. Yeah, super hot. Unless you've experienced that kind of capsaicin heat, you can't really explain it until you experience it. And even then, I've experienced being sprayed in the face with ICP, and I can't explain in words the intensity of that burning. It's, yeah, mind-blowing. Anyway, so yeah, it's bloody hot stuff, the pepper spray that's used. Even drawing the pepper spray is considered a use of force, so because there's a threat of force there, so it has to be reported and debriefed. Other things in security, so as far as staff training is concerned, every 2 years staff must undergo and be current in control and restraint techniques, must be current in the first aid and fire, and then back in the day when I used to do site training for my prison, I would do annual refreshers in hostage awareness, first officer response, suicide awareness, at-risk assessment tool, which assesses a prisoner's risk of harming themselves. So I used to do that, and you had to have those refreshers done every year. What else? By the way, if you have any questions specific to New Zealand corrections or our prison system, or where you want to compare one to the other, so if you're familiar with the American correction system, and they have many different systems within the system, please don't hesitate to ask, because I can only tell you what I know. Tools. So the New Zealand correction system first started out as the Department of Justice, and it was known as the Prison Service, and they had a black and white uniform. Then there was a restructure, I guess you could say, whereby the ministry, we have ministries in New Zealand government, so the Ministry of Justice then became the Department of Corrections. Well, prisons became the responsibility of the Department of Corrections, and that's where we started going to a brown, green and beige uniform, and we're still the Department of Corrections, and we've changed uniform. But I believe it went from the Justice Department to the Department of Corrections and around the 70s, which was when we used to have firearms. We used to have pistols and shotguns. They were disbanded, in about the 70s, I believe. I think it was 76. We used to have corporal punishment, so the death penalty we used to have. Up until I believe it was like the late 50s, but no one had been hanged for decades prior to that. We sort of developed past the death penalty, which then prompted a change in law. So we don't have the death penalty anymore. The last person to be hanged, I believe, was hanged in Napier Prison, which was shut a long time ago. So, how do prisons work for prisoners? Okay, well, so the kind of, I suppose, the process by which a prisoner comes into a New Zealand prison is sort of follows. A prisoner commits a crime, they're arrested, they're held in custody with the police and charged. Then they go to court, and the court decides what they're going to do with them, depending on the seriousness of the offending. They might release them on bail, which is different to bail as you would expect, or that like with bail bonds and bounty hunters. And we don't have that kind of thing in New Zealand. You don't have to pay to be on bail here. You could be released or remanded on bail, or you could be remanded in custody, which means you're facing active charges and you're subject to an investigation, remand. So if you're held in custody, you come into a prison, you are asked a whole bunch of questions. If we don't already know you, you're asked a whole bunch of questions about who you are, what you are, all your circumstances, your family, where you live. We take down all of your details around height, weight, ethnicity, your handedness, so if you're left or right-handed, what kind of marks you have, birthmarks, tattoos, scars, if you're an amputee, all of that kind of thing. So every kind of detail we can get about you we do. Okay, we take your fingerprints and take your photo. Then after that you're asked a whole bunch of questions around your base of support, your plans once you get out, all of that kind of stuff. And then you're assessed for risk. So we ask a whole bunch of specially designed questions that allude to an individual's risk of self-harm or suicide. Okay, and that involves directly asking someone, have you ever planned on killing yourself? Have you ever attempted to kill yourself? Do you want to kill yourself now? They're just three of the questions. If someone is found to be at risk and at risk of self-harm or suicide, then where they are placed on observations, at-risk observations, and they're observed every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes or every 45 minutes or every 60 minutes, and that can be daily, nightly or both. So you could be on 15-minute day-night obs where an officer's sole reason is to record what you were doing every 15 minutes 24 hours a day, or you might have been downgraded to 60-minute night-only obs, so you're observed and recorded at night time every hour. And the reason for that is because people lie awake in bed contemplating, and they start feeling sorry for themselves, get all depressed and do dumb things. Have I responded to self-harm? Yes, I have. I've had to do CPR on essentially a corpse, and because we are not qualified to pronounce an individual dead or alive, we are duty bound through the Human Rights Act, I believe it is, to provide the necessities of life, which means if I find someone who is struggling to survive, i.e. they can't breathe or they have no pulse, I am duty bound and legally obligated to do CPR unless I can justify a reason why not. For instance, the prisoner had I don't know, mucus coming from the mouth and blood all over his chest. I didn't have gloves or a face mask, so I'm unprotected and I'm putting my life at risk by helping them. That would be a legitimate reason not to provide the necessities of life. So because we can't pronounce anyone dead, we kind of have to do CPR on dead people from time to time. I've done it more than once and it's not nice. Has it affected me? Probably. Do I have a sick sense of humour? Most definitely. Okay, so we assess people for self-harm risk or at-risk issues. They're entitled to a few things. Minimum entitlements of a prisoner in New Zealand is a 5-minute phone call free of charge. Sorry, a 5-minute phone call per week. Okay, at their expense. If they have active charges, they are entitled to a free phone call. They are entitled to a free phone call if their circumstances change. For instance, they are transferred from one prison to the next, or if they go from being a remand prisoner to a sentenced prisoner, they are entitled to a phone call. Then there's event-based things. So if they have the shit beaten out of them, they've probably been given a phone call. What else are they entitled to? They're entitled to a visit. I think it's a 15-minute visit once a week or once a month. They're entitled to food, shelter, human rights stuff under the Geneva Convention. And they're also entitled to access to books, which is also under the Geneva Convention. As I've just stated, we're bound by the Geneva Convention, so if we fail to do so, we can actually be held criminally liable in an international court of law for crimes of torture, and that's not a road you want to go down by any stretch of the imagination. In prisons in New Zealand, the prison officers, staff, they mix in directly with the prisoners. We are in the same vicinity as them. We don't always have bars and stuff between us, so there is always an element of risk there. But you know that coming into the job. Geez, what else can I tell you, really? There's a whole bunch of stuff I could tell you, but it becomes sort of second nature. It's like muscle memory, you know. You just turn up and you do your job. Remembering all the specifics of the job, can be challenging. But anyway, so what have I done in my job? So I started in 2003. I was a corrections officer on the floor, working in what we call the wings. Okay, so that's working directly with prisoners, placing, unlocking, feeding. And when I say showering, I mean putting them in the shower. Just working the units and the wings. Excuse me. And then I became the DLO, the Drug Liaison Officer. It was my job to work information into intel. It was my job to apply crime prevention techniques to intel. Things like targeted searching of cells, prisoners, wings or units, visitors or units, entire units. And I was part of a regional search team. So our prisons are broken up into regions, and our region went from Taupō south essentially down to Wellington. And in our region, the prisons that consisted before the restructure were Hawke's Bay Prison, Manawatu Prison, New Plymouth Prison, and Wanganui Prison. So I'd work within that region, working with other search OICs, officers in charge, OIC, to target, and we'd just go from prison to prison, tipping things over to find contraband, cell phones, illicit drugs, weapons, that kind of thing, other bits of intel. So cell phones are illegal in prisons. Obviously, right to the conditions, boys. New Zealand was, I believe it's the first nationwide correctional jurisdiction to completely go smoke free. Nobody is allowed to smoke within the wire. So within the secure perimeter of any prison, nobody is allowed to smoke. Not prisoners, not staff. Okay, if staff want to smoke, they have to do it on an unpaid break, and they have to go to a designated spot, still on prison property, but outside of the wire. So it'd be like a little shed or a little shelter in the car park. Having smoking related items, so cigarette papers, filters, tobacco, cigarettes, lighters, matches, lighter fluid, anything to do with smoking, even e-cigs or vape, that's all illegal inside a prison. Nicotine replacement therapy, so NRT patches, they're gone. If prisoners smoke and they come into jail, they are provided with nicotine lozenges for a finite period of time to help them kick the habit. But prisoners will find ways of doing it. So they will smoke tea leaves rolled up in the pages of a Bible, because that's nice thin rice paper, and they will risk their lives to light it if they don't have an illegal lighter. So they will arc out a PowerPoint using wires just to light their what we call tobacco. So that's tea leaves used as tobacco. So yeah, going back to my history, so it's a search OIC, and through that role I had a number of gang factions trying to put pressure on me to quit being so effective. And I had carloads of gang members showing up to my house and intimidating my then wife, my now ex-wife, threatening my family, my kids, my house, threatening me. I had mongrel mob, black power, headhunters, nomads. Those are all gangs within New Zealand, probably the bigger gangs in New Zealand. and Hell's Angels actually, coming up to my house and trying to threaten me. From there I decided to take leave without pay. It was just under 8 months. I just left the prison system. I was still an employee, but I was on leave without pay. I took time away just to let things cool down and decide if that was what I really wanted to do, because at this stage I was only three years in the job, 3 or 4 years in the job. So I took a step back, because I've always said family's the most important thing. And no job is worth having your family threatened or hurt over, no way. So I took a break, decided that it's still what I wanted to do. I still had something to offer. I still could add value. There was things I wanted to achieve. So I went back and continued. I went back on the floor and working in the wings, because I'd already passed that portfolio on, and it was unfair for me to show back up and take it over again. It wasn't mine to take anyway. So I ended up working in the wings. When I came back, I worked in every unit within my prison: the remand unit, the sentence time medium unit, and the minimum security unit I worked in. Rotated through all of those. Then I worked in the MCR, the main control room. The main control room, so pushing buttons and watching screens. Did that for a little bit. And then the department started to get clever around training. They started adding tools for staff safety. So I was seconded by head office to become a regional trainer, a national trainer actually, but I worked within my region to deliver staff-centric safety training. So I did that for 12 months. Then I came back, and then my marriage shit itself, and my kids were with my ex-wife, and I only got to see them on weekends, because they had moved to a different town. So I was fortunate enough to be given the officer in charge role of D Block, which is our programs unit. So for the past 4 years, up until a couple of weeks ago, I was in charge of running my prison's education unit, programs unit. After I started there, the department changed focus from all this spending heaps of money and time on staff safety. They kind of ticked that box, so then they moved on to trying to rehabilitate prisoners more effectively, and they came up with a thing called RR25, which was a goal: reducing reoffending by 25% by 2017. I want to say it was a failure, but their statistics would say it worked. Debatable, but anyway, I'm not getting into that. So before RR25, when I started taking over the unit, we used to have about 50 prisoners a month through the education unit. It was cruisy as and borderline boring. Then when the focus came on board, we went from 50 prisoners a month to 1,100 prisoners a month. So it went to anything but boring. We had like a bazillion% increase in throughput and workload, and we still only had 2 staff. So yeah, as 2017 passed and the goal for RR25 slipped by the wayside, the focus came off programs, rehabilitation programs and criminogenic programs, and yeah, they still do sort of upwards of 400 a month, but yeah, the focus has pulled back significantly. The kinds of rehabilitations that are offered to prisoners within the system are criminogenic ones. So those are programs that address an offender's offending risks and needs. So for argument's sake, you have a recidivist drink driver. Clearly they have issues around offending with alcohol. So we do alcohol related offending stuff and find out the reasons why they rely upon alcohol. So it's not just about treating the alcohol usage or abuse, it's about finding out why they resort to alcohol and treating that need. So they might resort to alcohol because they hate their life because they're abused as children or something like that, as an example. So then what we do is we focus on the fact that they're unhappy with their life. We find out the reasons why they're unhappy and we treat those reasons. Secondary to that, we treat the alcohol use or abuse, and so those are criminogenic. So like carcinogenic is cancer causing, criminogenic is crime causing. So crime causing reasons. And then we've got non-rehabilitative interventions such as literacy, numeracy, driver licensing. So we do car licensing, forklift licensing, heavy traffic, so trucks. We do that kind of licensing. We do agricultural courses, carpentry courses, landscaping courses, painting, plastering. We do a whole range, and you can give prisoners, some would say you can give prisoners all the courses in the world, but it's up to them to apply what they learn, which is 100% true. But if you don't give prisoners things like that, okay, you can't expect them to go into a system and come out better, and that's where people generally don't realise, prisons are too soft, they shouldn't have TVs. Okay, so we put prisoners into a system where they're surrounded generally by more criminally orientated people. Okay, we cut them off from the world. They hang around and spend all of their time with more criminally orientated people, and then the general public expects these people to come out of prison better. It doesn't work that way. Okay, if you put someone in and they were caught for shoplifting, and you put them in with bloody gang members, okay, and like a vast majority of New Zealand prisons, I'm talking 70+%, probably even more, okay, are affiliated or part of a gang. So I put Timmy, who's just been done for shoplifting, okay, not part of a gang, I put him in with gang members. Guess what's going to happen? He's going to come out knowing how to do more than steal stuff. Okay, he's going to come out wanting to steal stuff, okay, for his gang, because he's now part of a gang. Prisons don't fix people just by locking them up. The reason we have prisons in New Zealand, and prisons generally, is you have an element of the community or society that prove through their actions that they cannot survive in society. So therefore, we remove them because they don't deserve to be there. Their punishment is removing them from society. Okay, we don't put them in prison to be punished. Okay, so it's not our job to make it even worse for them. Being put there is their punishment. Okay, it's not my job to punish a prisoner. It's my job to ensure that a prisoner is contained safely, securely and humanely, and it's to keep the community safe. That's my job as a prison officer. Supplementary roles to that is something called pro-social modelling, where through the way I behave and act should provide prisoners with a good example of how a human should behave. Hopefully through osmosis they take that on board and they realise that every time they have an issue they don't have to get all aggressive, okay, and then they can talk about it. It's showing them other ways of dealing with things. So when a prisoner comes up and threatens me to smash my face in, okay, I talk to the prisoner, okay, and I de-escalate him, and he thinks to himself, wow, how come he didn't want to have a fight? He talked about that. Oh, there is another way to deal with my emotions and my anger. Okay? Pro-social modelling is huge. It doesn't always work. okay, but it's better than nothing. Prisoners come into the system, they're assessed, they're placed, then they have to go back to court, and they'll either plead guilty or not guilty. If they plead guilty, they become remand convicted. So they're convicted awaiting sentence, known as CAS, another acronym. Because they are convicted, they are a criminal, and they're just awaiting their sentence. So then we can mix them with sentenced prisoners. If a prisoner goes not guilty, then they go on trial, okay? And they'll get found either guilty or not guilty. Generally speaking, in New Zealand, if a prisoner goes guilty and saves the justice system time, effort and money, the sentencing will go easier on a prisoner, okay? It also, by going guilty, it shows a level of ownership and potentially remorse, which means that they're not a lost cause, and the justice system rewards that by giving them a discount in sentence. Whether they're found guilty or they go guilty, they then get sentenced, and obviously they get sentenced to what they get sentenced to. Legend, brother. Nice wagon. They get sentenced to whatever they get sentenced to. And it could be a custodial sentence, so they get locked up in prison, or a community-based sentence. So it could be community detention. It could be home detention, which is 24/7 curfew and monitored electronically. So they have monitoring hardware like an ankle bracelet or an anklet. Community detention could be just a curfew with things like reporting in to their probation officer and or attending interventions or courses and or community work. They could be on community detention with electronic monitoring, so they might wear an anklet, but they're allowed out and about, just so that we can keep an eye on where they're going and what they're doing. I've covered off a shit ton just in this short little bit. Well, it's not short actually, it's about half an hour we've been going for. Like I said, there's heaps that we could talk about that I haven't covered off, that I just can't think of off the top of my head. If you have any specific questions, hey, ask it please in the comments. Ask me the questions. If I can answer it, I will. If I can't answer it, I'll tell you why I can't answer it, okay? There are going to be some things that I still can't talk about because of privacy, and I'm still, as a New Zealand citizen, bound by the Privacy Act in some regards. So, you know, that's around normally people's private circumstances or details, talking about specific individuals. I can't really talk about security as in specific things about certain places or specific places. But hey, as I said, if you've got a question, ask it. We'll keep doing this if you like until I've answered everything. I know the one we've just done is pretty unstructured and a bit of a ramble, but I was just kind of like free floating that one, and yeah. So anyway, thanks for listening, thanks for coming along. Be safe, take care, and put those questions in the comments box, and I'll make a question bank and we'll do this again. Take it easy, and I'll catch you on the next video.